Hi everybody, it's Anthony at the Sportsman Shop, and today we have Josh Bodene with us. You're going to talk about some NFA products. Welcome,
Good morning.
Josh.
Thank you. Good to see you.
So we did a video probably a little bit over a year ago, before the 41F ruling took into place, which changed some of the Form 4 paperwork, mostly on the trust side.
Correct.
So we're going to talk about that today and some other hot topics, but we'll get into the ruling on what the 41F has changed. And Josh is also a local lawyer that sets up the gun trusts, so we'll let him talk about that.
Great, appreciate it. So you probably by this point heard of 41P, 41F. 41P is simply the original proposed version of the ATF rule change that eventually turned into 41F that we all know at this point came into effect last July, so July of 16, and has now been in effect just about a year. A lot of the benefits of the trust format still remain in place. Some of the benefits of the trust format have gone away. So if you like, I can get into that at this point.
Sure.
So the main thing that has changed since last year, as far as trust ownership of NFA assets, is that whereas previously it used to be that if you were an individual owner, you would have to go through the fingerprinting, the photographing, the background check, and all that, but not if you were in a trust. So now, under the new regulations starting last July and moving forward, even trust owners, trustees will have to go through that same process. And so, regardless of whether you're an individual owner or a trustee and you have a trust, you're going to have to do the fingerprinting, the photographing, the background check. Now, thankfully, for both individual ownership and trust ownership, the CLEO, or the Chief Law Enforcement Officer, sign-off is no longer needed. It is now a CLEO notification. So instead of having to get permission from the CLEO, you're now simply informing the CLEO. And that's the same regardless of whether you're in a trust or individual. So that's an improvement on that front. So unfortunately, that benefit of trust ownership has gone away. But a lot of the benefits that were already in place, just by virtue of what a trust is, certainly remain.
Right, and it's still the cleaner way to do it, as far as passing the items down.
Correct.
Correct. When the original person that heads the trust passes, still cleaner in the aspect that anybody on the trust can use the particular item, where it's a silencer or a short-barreled rifle, shotgun.
Absolutely.
Without the person that individually owns it has to be there if
Correct.
it was done under an individual.
Absolutely.
So the other difference on the trust is there's a responsible person form, which is simply that everybody listed on the trust, as Josh mentioned, has to fill out some information, additional passport photos. This is the way that they're checking everybody on the trust at their end now.
Correct. And thankfully that does not apply to beneficiaries. So if you have a trust and you and the other trustees are essentially the folks who have access to the firearms, have the privilege and the responsibility of making sure that they're kept safe. Those folks are the responsible parties, like you said, who have to do the forms and the background checks. The beneficiaries, however, depending on how your trust is set up, and including in the way that I have them set up, the beneficiaries do not have to go through that process, because they are not the ones who are safekeeping the items. They're not the ones who have the access and the trappings of ownership, if you will. But the beneficiaries are typically going to be the folks who are in time and with maturity and reaching a certain milestone age going to become trustees in the way that I've drafted it. And just getting into the bigger topic, not all trusts are created equal. You want to look under the hood and find out what you're getting. A good question to ask is this a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust? A revocable trust is essentially something that you can revoke fairly easily. And the downside there is that if you are sued and you have a creditor who is looking to execute on a judgment against you, they're going to know that everything in the revocable trust is accessible to you, because with a stroke of a pen, you can undo a revocable trust, and it's right in your pocketbook or your wallet. An irrevocable trust is exactly what it sounds like. It's not revocable except for very small exceptions. And so it truly is more protected, it truly is an asset of the trust, and that's really how you want it. So that's a good question to ask. But again, the trustees are the responsible parties, the beneficiaries are not.
Okay. So you just touched on a couple different trusts there. If you can go over some, I guess, the beginning process of getting set up if people are interested in getting the trust.
Sure. So step one would be contact the sportsman shop, figure out what it is that you're interested in, and in counsel with them, figure out what works for you. And then once you've made the purchase, give me a call and we can work out getting you set up for a trust if it's appropriate. I'm not going to sell you a trust that you don't need. Some folks, I'll be honest, tell me, hey, X, Y, Z, and I'll let them know, I don't think a trust is really what you need. If it's a once and done, especially, and I'll be straight up with folks, if all they want is one suppressor and they're not really in a hurry and they're willing to wait, I know you wanted to touch on the Hearing Protection Act. That's a bill that's currently making its slow way through Congress. And I say to some folks, hey, maybe it's worth waiting to see if the Hearing Protection Act passes. A lot of bills don't pass, but if you're not in a hurry, if all you want is one suppressor, I'm not, necessarily going to strongly, suggest that you pay me to set up a trust. On the other hand, if you're looking to get more items, if you're looking to not just get a suppressor or not just one, but a few more, especially like you said, if you want to make sure that you have a bit of a collection that is accessible not just to yourself, but to other folks, your loved ones, then a trust is definitely going to be the best way to go for you. If you're looking for ease of succession, down through estate succession, essentially, the trust is absolutely going to be the way to go. If you are looking to protect assets, even not just NFA assets,
right,
but higher capacity firearms, things that are not NFA firearms, but if you kind of think about the direction that legislation is going, things that in the future may be limited as far as their ability to be transferred, getting that into a trust, make sure that it is not being transferred. So for you and I to be on a trust together, to add a firearm, to take a firearm away, there's not a transfer going on. Well, let me correct that. Once the firearm is in the trust, for you to, if you pass away, if we add a trustee, if I pass away, we add a trustee, that's not a transfer. And so once that firearm is in the trust, under current law, and as far as we can reasonably foresee into the future, there's not a transfer going on. On the topic of, well, what can I do if a friend of mine wants to use an NFA item that is not registered to him? So as we've been discussing, there's two ways of owning these NFA items, firearms. One is through individual ownership. The other would be, or most commonly, through trust ownership. So if the other individual is on the trust, then obviously no problem, and that's one of the benefits to having a trust. You can name close family members, close friends, if they're truly close friends, and that way they can access the items, the firearms, even when you're not there. However, if you own the firearm in your own name, or if the person who is interested in using the firearm is not on the trust, you have to be extremely careful, because you do not want a transfer to occur. In other words, you do not want someone who is not a registered owner or not a trustee of that firearm to be in possession of it in a way that the law would consider to be a transfer. So really the recommendation is not to allow that usage at all. Practically, it is allowable to permit someone to use it if they are in your presence, if you are supervising them, if you essentially consider yourself to be an unofficial range safety officer, in the sense that you can disarm that person immediately if need be. That you are present, you're supervising, you're engaged. Under those circumstances, it is allowed, and that's not considered a transfer. And so someone who's not registered, not a registered owner or not a registered trustee would be able to use your suppressor, say if you're at the range and you want to allow them to do that. But I would strongly caution you to make sure that if you do that, make sure that this is someone you know, someone you trust, someone that you have no reason to believe is a prohibited person, and you cannot leave that person's presence, cannot step away even for a moment. It has to be within your presence, your control, because you don't want there to be a transfer, and you want to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. So just wanted to make sure that I cleared that up for folks.
You talked about the Hearing Protection Act, so we'll dive into that. This is actually a bill that was introduced back in 2015 and has recently come back to life per se on January 9th of 2017 by Representative Duncan and Representative Carter. A lot of people thought initially that this was going to get shoved through because of the current situation in the government, right. Especially since Trump took over as president. Slowly gaining momentum. The cosign is about where it needs to be, but the latest information that I've come across on the American Suppressor Association, and also from talking to some of the other silencer companies, if it went to vote and everybody voted party lines, we still don't have enough to vote. I believe it was 7 or 8 votes away. So these midterm elections coming up going to be very crucial. That's going to get us a lot closer to where we need to be to hopefully get that passed. So anybody that's waiting for this to pass tomorrow, not going to happen. There was a little momentum last month actually. Unfortunately, the shooting took place down in DC. There was a bill that was going to get tied to. Unfortunately, that got pushed by the wayside at this point. But make sure you guys get out and vote this next time around. Don't wait every 4 years like most people do for the presidency vote, unfortunately. These individual Congress, the House, and everything is very important for this bill to pass. If you don't know what this bill is about, essentially what they're looking to do is take the silencers off of the ATF list.
Correct.
So you'd be able to come in, purchase them over the counter. Ironically, what they do over in Europe. And they actually need them for hunting over there, which is ironic. And you can walk in, pick one up.
It's considered bad form to go to the range in Europe without a silencer.
Right.
Ungentlemanly. So that's one thing that we can learn from them.
Yep. And the other thing in this bill at this point was to take the $200 transfer cost if anybody's in there as of October 22nd of 2015. Obviously that's probably going to get revised the longer this bill goes on.
Right.
This is in the committee, well, it's part of the IRS, the committee that's seeing it down there. So I've got a hard time believing that government's going to be willing to flip $200 back to the people. But
yeah, once government is able to get a tax and get some money, it's hard to get its hand out of the pocket. But yeah, it's. I mean, we mention it here on the video because it is encouraging. The progress it's made, it does seem to have some support. But like any other bill, just because it's a bill does not mean it's actually going to get signed into law. Obviously, both houses of Congress have to accept it, and then Trump would have to sign it in, or if for whatever reason he didn't, then there would have to be a supermajority. So it's a long way between today and passage, but we're encouraged, and so we want to make sure that you have the up-to-date information.
Right. And there's only right now, we got Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, California, obviously, Hawaii, and Indiana that don't allow suppressors.
Yeah, very few do not allow suppressors, but again, that's distinct from the Hearing Protection Act. The fact that they allow it doesn't change the fact that under current law, they're still through the NFRTR, in other words, registered through the ATF, and you have to either get them registered in your own name or registered through a trust. And just to back up a little bit, I definitely suggest that you check out the video that we did a little while back for some good context. But when we're talking about NFA items, most of you know at this point, we're talking about suppressors, silencers. We're also talking about short-barreled rifles. So that's rifles that are have an overall length of 26 inches or of less than 26 inches, or a barrel length of less than 16 inches, or shotguns, barrel length of less than 18, overall length of less than 26. Those are all legal in Pennsylvania, again, provided that you have them properly registered. Destructive devices are not legal in Pennsylvania, so that's grenades, things like that.
Yep.
But for the most part, these items are legal, like I said, the short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and suppressors in Pennsylvania.
And also the full auto guns, the limited supply that's out there right now.
Correct. Provided they were in the system and registered
right.
from 1986 and et cetera.
Yep.
Correct.
So the other big thing that I just want to touch on real quick that not a lot of people realize is that hunting with a suppressor in Pennsylvania is legal. Most of the states that allow ownership now have also passed legalizing them for hunting. Looking at the map here quick, there's only 2 states at this point, and I know that the American Suppressor Association has been a huge driving force behind this. So we're not implementing you go out road hunting with it. That's not what it's designed for. But if you do some varmint hunting, groundhog hunting, hunting around a farm like we have in this area, it's a huge benefit. Fox hunting at night, not waking the neighbors, having a cop show up in your field wanting to know what's going on.
Right. Unfortunately, we were very close to having AR-15s legalized as far as hunting, for hunting purposes, or generally, I should say, semi-automatic rifle hunting in general. We were very close to it. It didn't happen here in Pennsylvania, so it's only small game that you can use the semi-automatic for. Slightly different topic, but we are one of the few states that does not permit it at this point.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, that's everything we wanted to talk about today, folks. Thanks for joining Josh and I. And if anything else changes, we'll keep you posted on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Josh.
you having me.
Yep.
Thank you. So, I am with Clymer Conrad, and you can reach us at 717-299-7101. And not only do I handle firearms law, but criminal defense. If you are in a situation where you are a firearms owner and you're being spoken to by the police in regards to that or in regards to any other matter, please give me a call. I'm very happy to help. And again, that's 717-299-7101, clymerlaw.com.